Now, you may have seen the Netflix show Quarterback, and if you did, you may have noticed one of the products that was in that show, and we're going to talk about it today. And I've come from a product background, so I've worked on machines, I've developed machines with a group, and one of the questions was, why do we still use the same stuff that's been developed in the 80s and it just kind of changes? The same iron weights, the cable machines, you just make some modifications. This is the same thought, a little bit deeper than the thoughts I had, that was had by the mastermind of a new tech revolution. And it started with a problem like most things. Okay. When he was a kid, he had knee problems, and I don't know if he still does today. We're going to find out here in a second. But he was playing sports. And when he was younger, these knee problems persisted. And around the same time, his father was also tinkering around with a mechanical marvel in his garage, which was a visionary product that was born while he was at MIT. Now, years later, the guy who I have on the show today, he dives into what his father had been creating. It was kind of raw. It had the foundation of what it was soon to be, which was something great and awesome, because I got a chance to use it. And then in 2015, he creates this company called Proteus. And this unit is a 3-dimensional resistance tool. Okay. It uses completely new tech. Okay. And it's really surpassed what I would say its own innovation, because I've personally been able to use this, and it's being used by top pro athletes to gain an edge, such as Patrick Mahomes. Like I said, if you watch that Netflix show, you would have seen it, or Justin James, okay, to be the champion in golf for the world's longest drive. So today you're going to hear from the guy himself, Sam Miller. I'm so honored to have you on my show today.
It's great to be here, Michael. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. So I want to just ask you the very first question, because I highlighted it as we're talking about this, and we've had conversation before on the phone. But I've been developing equipment for about 3 years, and it didn't last. It wasn't a huge long stint, but I had the opportunity to work with designer and engineers, and I was the product developer on these projects. And you go through the biomechanics, and a lot of the idea behind innovation was really reducing the size of equipment, reducing the footprint, making the product better, more appealing. But there was really not a whole lot of innovation on different types of motors or tools for resistance. And I don't know if what you use is a motor, because I didn't get to take your machine apart, but I got to use it. And it's amazing. I mean, it's totally unique. And I think it has application in it's a very broad application that you can use it in. But why did you think that, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of hours on this? Because I know what it's like when you develop a business, you sleep working and you work while you're awake. And so it doesn't ever stop. The brain doesn't turn off. So why did you kind of take this shift? What happened?
So, Proteus started for me as an interest that turned into a passion, then to an obsession. And now it's like my whole life, aside from my wife and 2 boys. And that's really kind of what it requires to do this. This is, sometimes I wish we were developing something a lot simpler and easier, but the opportunity wouldn't be as big, but it would certainly be easier. We've developed, a very truly unique, and we believe revolutionary, performance testing and resistance training technology. And the genesis of it, I should say the impetus for creating it is largely around trying to solve what we see as a huge void in data and understanding of physical strength and power, one of the most important pillars of human performance, which historically has been quantified very one-dimensionally. And and just like the notion that, if you think about, all right, we've got wearables for sleep and recovery and cameras for biomechanics, and you know, scanners and imaging for, you know, whether it's body imaging or body composition, like what is the equivalent for physical strength? And it really is like, how much can you squat, bench, you know, these kind of like basic movements that are important, but it misses the kind of the full picture around we move in 3 dimensions. We need to be able to understand, not just quantify, but improve, you know, movement and physical strength and power in multi dimensions, right? 3-dimensional world. So you know, while this connected fitness kind of explosion that we've seen over the last 5 years has been exciting, it's largely just digitizing an existing piece of equipment. I don't mean to downplay, because there's some great innovations and great products that exist today that are very complementary with Proteus too. Our approach was basically around not really just not a content play. It's not like put a screen on a cable machine, put a sensor on a bike, and then serve up content. We're trying to solve like almost a diagnostic problem. And the way to do that, basically measuring strength, is your ability to move against a force. And if you are therefore trying to quantify strength for 3-dimensional movements or multiplanar movements or functional movements or rotational movements, where you're moving through multiple planes, you need force in multiple planes. And you can't do that from a cable machine, which is a rope. And the reason is because if you are however you're moving, whatever direction you're moving, the resistance, the force that you are trying to overcome is coming from one direction. But if you change directions, the source of the resistance and the direction of it is not changing. And what that produces is a dramatic change in the resistance that you are trying to overcome. So, for example, if you're doing a trunk rotation on a cable machine, there's one particular point in that movement when you're moving exactly away from the cable, or from the origin of the cable, that you are actually getting the resistance level that you set, right? And you're not getting it through the end ranges. And what this does is it doesn't allow you to engage the muscles and the movements that are required to perform that movement throughout the entire movement pattern. And if you just change your foot position, orientation relative to the machine, you're going to get that peak resistance in a different part of the movement that's unpredictable. And it changes these variations, which also mean you can't get any sort of reliable measurement from it. So that then led to this realization of, all right, like you can't solve this data problem by just putting a sensor on something that exists, right? You can't just put a screen on a piece of equipment and be like, okay, now I can capture strength measurement, because you need physical force. So that led us to the realization that we actually need to create a new machine altogether. And that machine has to allow for movement in any direction, in any dimension. And as you said at the beginning here, the inspiration for that contraption, so to speak, was something that my father invented and spun out of MIT in the early 90s, and kind of like developed in the basement of my house outside of Boston when I was growing up. And so we used to call it the machine. He's still alive, but he's getting a little older now. But he's a brilliant.
He's probably happy that you've taken on what he started and you've evolved it into something.
Totally. I think he's very, very proud, of course. We're doing something that is many stratospheres beyond what he kind of ever imagined, which I think is fun and exciting for him. I don't think he quite understands the, what like we're really doing on the like data and measurement side and the software side for sure. But he certainly knows that, the thing that I'm most proud of is actually solving the key, like a mechanical issue that he couldn't solve. But then again, like I couldn't do what we're doing today without what he did.
Was his intent to design something because your knee was in pain, or was it something else? Like what was his inspiration? Cause there was a seed there that started, and that kind of, permeated into your brain on some level for you to go, good idea. Let me see if I can do something with this.
Yep. So, I mean, so I think, so we've got an athletic family. I grew up playing every sport imaginable. I've got an older sister. She did too. She's a very, very good athlete, all-American lacrosse player. And my dad was a very talented basketball and football player. And so there was an athletic kind of background to all this, or backdrop, I should say. I think as he started to get into mechanical and electrical engineering, and then started working as a visiting scientist at MIT, he kind of started to like merge some of those interests. And he was working on, one of the projects that he was working on was in rehabilitative robotics. And for stroke victims, right, that, those types of robots that kind of help, they're called like active assist motors, where they kind of like help, you feed yourself, or, whatever it may be. And the active part of it is key. The active means it's motorized, and it can actually move itself as a robot. His realization was, wow, this is allowing for three-dimensional movement that's like resisted, but the active motorized component of it like would make it incredibly or impossibly unsafe to do at like higher speed movements. And that then led to him thinking about, all right, well, what if we could create something that's passive, which is that it's robotic, but not in the sense that it can move itself. It's actually just reacting to the direction of your movement to provide a force. And then he wanted to create something for simulating sport specific movements. And he had this concept, which was a mechanical structure, brilliant, but couldn't figure out how to so it has 3 stages to it. Each stage provides for a direction of movement, side to side, up and down. And then there's a linear stage, which is the in and out. He started to use magnetic particle brakes, which is like it's the kind of technology that is used to stop trains. They are super durable. They're basically frictionless, which is a key part of this. And they can be controlled electronically and almost instantaneously if you know how to manipulate them correctly. And so he got this working with these magnetic brakes for 2 of the 3 stages. He couldn't figure out the linear stage. And the reason is because to make this work, you need to understand where the kind of end handle is in space. And because there's this linear arm in and out, that acts like a lever. So the farther you have that arm out, and you're moving side to side, the more kind of current you need to, or the more resistance you need to command to the side to side brakes to account for the lever arm. But it's very, very complicated math. It's like using, Cartesian and spherical coordinates. Like it's insane. And you need like computer systems that can actually do that. So it never really could do much. And also he was trying to do something for simulation. And so anyways, that was the issue. That was the thing that one of the primary things that we solved right away. Not right away. I mean, took a few years. Took a while. took a few years, and then patented that. But then we weren't trying to develop something that was a simulation tool. We realized that we're able to provide what we call 3D resistance, constant force in all directions. Feels like sort of moving through a fluid or underwater, and you can change the viscosity of that fluid. That's very, very heavily patented by us on a number of fronts. But that is what enables the ability to capture data, because you're moving through constant force, and then we build a software product around that. So it's very complex that we've actually turned into something that is manufacturable, is heavily tested, and we've got 75,000 users, a billion data points. Last year alone, we recorded almost 100 million reps.
Wow.
These machines are used all the time. We've got close to 400 machines now in the US and Canada, which is we've grown about 10x in the last 2 years. But this isn't a toy. It's not a gimmick. This is just like a paradigm shift. And our vision is that this technology will be ubiquitous and really belongs in more locations, we think, than a treadmill does, for example, across all these different verticals, and will ultimately be the universal standard for physical strength and power measurement, which is what we're really trying to pioneer.
So I'm listening to what you're saying intently, and comments and questions are happening at the same time. So the first thing that I have for you is, I remember in my first business, the aha moment that I had, and I remember where I was. I remember what was happening. I almost know close proximity to the time that it happened. And I was in an elevator. I mean, it was like almost 10 o'clock at night. I was with my buddy. So you have those aha moments, and sometimes you sit on them for a bit. Sometimes you continue to evolve that idea that you have, but you can't get it out of your brain. So for you, when did you go, oh, this could be used in the fitness industry and it could be used like this? When did that happen?
Probably 2012.
Where were you at? Because I think it's this, everyone has that aha moment, and they can recall it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, so mine has been it's been a series of them tied together at different points around different things. And the reason is, so the first one for me was seeing this emergence in 2010 ish. I graduated from Vanderbilt in 2008 with an economics and history degree. I was going to go into architecture and design. I had actually done a bunch of coursework, some graduate study work at the Harvard School of Design for architecture. But I moved into engineering for a construction management and engineering firm, and I was getting a lot of great experience. I moved into sales. I was in product design. I was just kind of bouncing around a lot of things, becoming kind of a generalist. But I had an entrepreneurial bug for forever. And I knew very early on in my kind of working career, I was like, I'm a lot hungrier than kind of just working my way up the ranks. I wanted to do something very different and merge a lot of the kind of interests and passions and ideas that I was having. And so 2010 was when this kind of like really the emergence of the quantified self movement. And this is when there was like distinctly time where I had this realization around, this obsession with biometrics, and then this understanding of like, as a student of history, I'm like going through the evolution of strength training, right? And like, what I think I was watching the NFL Combine, and I'm like, we're testing the bench press,
right?
Right, like 225, how many reps? And by the way, I love watching that. By the way, it's entertaining, and it's cool, and it probably has value in some ways. But to me, I'm like, okay, we're still here. That's what matters. And no, like everybody knows that there's way more important things. The question is, why aren't we doing that? Right. And so that then led to this series of, progressive realizations and pulling pieces together. And then I started to go, this machine that was in the basement, like, this is so much potential in so many different areas, but there's a lot of things to kind of uncover here. But what this requires is really we're trying to do something that's creating its own market, right? There's not a parallel. And so, and then, fast forward a couple of years, I, distinctly like put those pieces together. And then I remember actually when I was watching early, I was an early fan of Peloton, believe it or not, because I could clearly identify early companies that are like, okay, they're doing
something
the
new,
thing that's going to become big, and you know, can have your opinions about Peloton, but like they've done an impressive thing as a consumer product around being able to, create a entirely new market, delivering, certain services, at home, and through content, through digitizing existing piece of equipment. So this is sort of a meandering response, but there has been a whole series of aha moments for me that were really putting the pieces together. And then I just start to go, like when I go in on something, it's all in. And so I was consuming, reading like textbooks on kinesiology and, you know, physical therapy coursework without being in school, like that sort of thing. And then just talking to people. And I learned early on in sales too, like how important it is to like put yourself in positions where you're uncomfortable, which is like how you grow. It's a similar thing with training a muscle, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's how you grow. And exactly. And so, similarly, I would like became very comfortable and eager to be like, I'm going to get into a position where I'm able to like talk to an orthopedic surgeon, and have it be a real back and forth of talking about, I know what I don't know, right? That's a strength of mine for sure. But being able to be in a room with somebody across all these different disciplines and actually be able to understand problems that they have, and, and the reasons behind things, and that the realization there from trainers and doctors and physical therapists was like, it's very obvious that, there's a tremendous amount of value. There would be a tremendous amount of value, and is sought after to be able to understand your ability or assess somebody's ability to perform functional movements. The solution required, like, you have to reimagine something completely. It's the Henry Ford quote. Like, you ask somebody what they want, they would say a faster horse, right? And so that's when I was like, okay, I think I need to like create something here, and then let's go test it.
When I first started getting my head wrapped around what Proteus was and how you take the data and display it before jumping on the unit, okay? Because Justin James and I had an opportunity to work out together, thanks to you, on Proteus. And when we were going through this, there's this LCD screen or LED. I don't know the difference just by looking at the screen. But I had this moment of time where I was brought back to watching Rocky Balboa and Ivan Drago fighting, and Ivan Drago's hitting this power plate, right, to measure the amount of power or force that he's generating, and that was all one directional, right, one plane. But I got on the unit that you designed and created, and Justin and I are going back and forth who can create more power, and it's across all planes. And it was amazing for me to see this, because I also remember in school, one of the things that we studied was the difference between concentric and eccentric contraction. And what was understood is that you don't really develop a muscle through concentric training. It was, at least this is what I was taught. And it's all through eccentric. So you increase more strength through eccentric load. And through that, you can also see improvements in hypertrophy. But then talking with Justin, he's working on this unit that you've created. Everything's concentric, yet his power is increasing, and you're able to measure it and see it. You can see his last test results on power in a specific motion pattern. And he's telling me how his power is increasing, how he's training on the unit to increase his power, to have an edge over the other professional athletes. And it was just mind-boggling to me, because I'm thinking to myself, man, this is going to take athletic performance to the next level. It really will. And I don't think everyone notices that yet. And when it does, when everyone notices that, it's going to change the game quite a bit.
Couldn't agree more. And I think you said that very, very well. It's a very intelligent observation too, that one of the most unique characteristics about this technology that we've built is, like I was going back to what I was saying, that active assist robots versus passive, right? There isn't an active component to Proteus. It's not a robot that's going to move on its own. So what it's doing is it's reacting almost instantaneously to match the direction of your movement.
Oh, I could feel it
with force.
Oh yeah,
right.
Without a doubt.
And if you let go, if you let go of the handle, it will stay there.
Nothing
right.
happens. Yep.
And so it's almost adaptive hardware in a sense. And so what that means is basically every movement you're doing is concentric in the sense that it's lengthening, right? I mean, assuming you're doing an isolated movement. If you're doing a bicep curl, the way to think about this is it's all muscle contraction. And then on the way down, you'd actually be doing a tricep extension, not a length. I mean, it is a lengthening of the bicep, but it's not pulling you down, right? You're actually pushing. So you can do antagonistic movements at the same time, a press into a row, right? And what's super interesting about this being, we call it concentrically biased, because there is a little bit of you get a little bit of the eccentric on deceleration, but
it's minor.
Nevertheless, there can be incredible benefits there. And obviously for anyone that says, well, you need eccentric for hypertrophy and muscle growth and so forth. I mean, think about cycling as an activity. That's a concentric activity and if you've ever looked at a competitive cyclist's quads, right, and calves,
toothpicks, right? That's what they are.
Yeah, right. It's you absolutely can. It's just all about the dosage. Right. That said, as a training tool, Proteus isn't meant to be a replacement for everything that's out there. It can be, depending on how you use it, but that's not what it's meant to be as a training tool. As a training tool, it is meant to be a completely new modality that has its own benefits, right? Which are around, developing. It's the ultimate tool for, triplanar power and speed development. And one of the most interesting things that we've found is that because of all this data that we've captured, did Justin, by the way, take you through a performance test? I think you had a report.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had fun with beating me on all those tests.
You did. Okay, got it. Yeah. And he probably has created his own. Probably.
He did. He didn't take me through that one. It was like 20 minutes long on the test that he has for himself.
Oh,
it's a workout. I mean, I did it for 5-10 minutes and I was breathing hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you just do, the average session length is like 6 minutes. So the neuromuscular stimulation component of this is profound and significant. And we've actually done research with the Hospital for Special Surgery looking at Proteus's 3D resistance on 8 different shoulder muscles for 5 exercises on Proteus, 5 on a free weight, 5 on a cable machine at the same resistance. And because of its 3D resistance is constant throughout the entire range of motion, they found that it produces up to 95% greater peak muscle activation and 87% higher muscle activation duration than both a free weight and a cable machine. And you can use it every day, basically without soreness, right? In a lot of ways. So it's really, really interesting modality. But the one of the most interesting things we found is because we were able to take data from the system, is that we uniquely understand. We've basically built the world's first and only database for total body and functional physical strength. So we've got this is new normative data. So if 100 people walked in the room here and I knew the demographic, I could tell you with high probability, without any of them ever touching a Proteus, what portion of them are likely to have deficiencies in core strength and rotational strength, plyometric or, low elasticity, you know, whatever movements we've tested, lower extremity pushing, vertical pushing power, and, lateral lunging, and where the deficiencies are, basically where they likely fall in the force velocity curve. And as part of that exploration we've got, a billion data points, and some of these standardized tests are, there's so many sessions being done per month. Like the typical site is doing anywhere from 100 to 800 monthly sessions on Proteus.
Wow.
The businesses that we work with. But one of the most interesting things we found is that the movements that are often trained the most, or maybe perhaps recommended as, I hesitate to call them cookie cutter programs, but like if you say we'll build the strength training program for someone, you get a lot of sagittal plane movements that are prescribed, a lot of heavier resistance type exercises. And the reality is those happen to not necessarily be the movements that actually need to be trained the most. And in fact, with regards to the sagittal plane, it's the movements that are the movements for lower extremity anyways, what those movements need the most is speed and acceleration, which means training at a lighter load at a higher velocity. That's where those movements are deficient, no matter what demographic you look at. And then there's a lot of really interesting nuance, especially as you age. We've found you lose 10% of power every 10 years you age across the entire body. Females tend to maintain power longer up until their 70s, and then it drops a little bit more. And as you age, the rotational and multiplanar movements that you perform, those decline 18% faster than the basic uniplanar movements. As you age, it's almost more important to be training at a lighter level of resistance at a higher speed and for those functional movements than it is to be doing heavy squatting, for example. So there's all these really unique insights that we started to pull out that we uniquely know, and we're starting to employ those into the product.
Do you think you could, but based on all the data, right? Because there's a lot of data. Do you think you would be able to predict an injury on someone prior to it happening based on the weaknesses they have in particular areas of their body?
So I am very cautious about saying that we can do that today. We cannot do that today with high confidence. Do I think we will be able to do that at some point? I do. I absolutely do. I think that this has, one of the challenges since the beginning has been there's not a reference database. It's not like we can compare this against, this is new information. And so, which we struggled with in the beginning because nobody really knew what to do with it. Because we were all excited. The first machine we got out of the field, I used to build the machines myself, got into the field all excited and proud about this data. And then we realized, wait, nobody cares. Nobody knows what to do with it. That's a problem. So it took us years to figure that out. Started working with these very elite trainers and institutions to help us with that, and a lot of trial and error. And we've started to solve that. But that's just phase one. We haven't even started on the predictive capability side. We're actually working on something right now that's going to start to build, because these performance tests give hyper personalized exercise recommendations that the businesses we work with use to totally streamline. It's like a sports science lab in a box, but you take 5 minutes and be able to do an evaluation for strength and power for anybody. Our users are 8 to age 93. And then give them a report that becomes the foundation for somebody's individualized training program. It's very powerful. But the next phase is we're going to start to automatically create personalized workouts for people based on those, right? And then,
with the technology today, you're so close to being able to spit out the information that they need instantaneously.
Yeah, it's going to transform into a true diagnostic and almost like a virtual diagnostic trainer or coach, if that makes sense. But we're really focused right now on empowering the trainers and the physical therapists, of which we have thousands, to enhance the quality of their services and make their life a lot easier, and then provide tools for the businesses that are our customers to leverage to enhance their business. And we've been very successful at that.
So I'll keep it short here as best I can, because again, my brain is spinning on ideas, questions, and comments, and so I'm trying to refrain from interrupting and asking these questions, because I want you to tell the story of where you're going. So back up for a second on the magnetic. What did you call them?
Magnetic particle brakes.
Okay. So that's what's being used in this product specifically.
Yes.
So I would imagine that it has other use cases available for, what you've designed and how you've designed it, and the math behind it all. It probably can be used in other verticals outside of fitness.
Yes.
So, do you have ideas on those things already, on how you could potentially use it?
Yeah. I think we'd have to do probably episode 2, 3, and 4, but the short version is, honestly, one of the biggest challenges from the beginning was, if you're trying to set out to solve a problem around filling a critical void in data, that's for like one of the most important pillars of human performance, as I said, there's a lot of solving that means that there's a lot of opportunities to turn that into a business, because that information is so valuable in so many different verticals. And then when you combine that, of course, with a training modality too, that can be used from post-operative rehabilitation to peak performance training to, high intensity interval training to active recovery. Then it's like, so for the big challenge for us from the beginning was actually picking a vertical. And we knew naturally we've always been pulled into kind of athletics. And we started very narrowly focused on like elite baseball, right? And from there to other sports, still at the elite. And now we're, actually our biggest demographic is like youth, high school, and college athletes across all sports. But we are growing now fast as we're being pulled into more commercial fitness realms. The largest demographic that's growing is like the 35 to 60-year-old non-athlete population, male and female, who are using it for either whether it's recreational golf to I just want to feel like I'm moving better and do that safely. And that's been really powerful for us. We already have a presence. We're in pro and college, Power 5 schools, but we work with businesses that serve athletes, whether it's sports medicine, physical therapy to sports performance, and then commercial gyms, and a little bit of biohacking too. As we get further along, we're going to get deeper into medical, and like diagnostic, and that then also can take you into areas like pharma and biotech, because if you think about, I don't want to get off the rails here, but if you think about companies like Biogen, Novartis, that are developing drugs and treatments for the purpose of trying to combat or treat musculoskeletal disease, and whether it's ALS, MS, whatever it may be, where that is usually loss of strength is one of the like primary or secondary clinical endpoints, and to be able to use this type of tool to evaluate the efficacy of those drug, the results that those drugs produce in treatment, and then to be able to prescribe something like Proteus to as a therapy. There's a huge, it's a little abstract, but there's a huge opportunity there. Beyond that, we're already we've always said that from the beginning, yes, we've got a hardware anchor to this product, which is critically important, but ultimately we will be primarily a software and
it's a data
company.
Yeah, it's
the data opportunity here, whether it's health insurance to, it's this new normative information. It's unbelievably powerful. And we want to just like do that the right way. It's one of those things where there's a lot of things you can do. The worst thing you can do is try to pursue it all at once. So we just try to be really disciplined about like getting, letting ourselves getting pulled into certain markets and not forcing things. And fortunately, that kind of demand gen, so to speak, has happened totally organically for us primarily through word of mouth, which has let us kind of be pulled into areas where there's clearly value today. And we've barely gotten started. So it's pretty excited.
Where can someone get Proteus? How can they I mean, I got my hands on it thanks to you. I don't own one, but I had a lot of fun with it. So how can someone get a Proteus? How do they order one? How do they get their hands on one so they can have it?
Yep. So go to our website and submit a form.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. ProteusMotion.com and click request a demo and fill out it's a couple name your what and then fill out your level of your area of interest. And if you say, for example, I'm an athlete looking for the nearest Proteus, we are now directing you to a Proteus location finder map where we've started to we have a Proteus certified trainer program. It's part of our kind of education. It starts with onboarding and then it's continued education. And we've got incredible trainers that are really experts. We have developed like an affiliate program with certified sites too. So of our 400, partner sites so far, a good portion of them, are now certified. And so those are the ones that end up on our location finder map. So you can see actually the information, the trainers' names there. And then from a purchasing standpoint or learning more about the product and demo with an expert from our team, say I'm interested in adding Proteus to my facility. And that's like a little drop-down menu. And we have a super responsive team. We'll give you some information that it's always a surprise to people. I've always said we have a very misunderstood product because it's just, there's a lot of noise in this space, right? And so it's easy to be like, whether it's perceived as a gimmick, I'm not saying we ever are, but it's, people often come to us and they think about us as like, oh, this is a fancy cable machine or something. It's like, that's not at all what this is, right?
I'll tell you what.
Very complimentary.
Yeah, it's without a doubt a compliment. I mean, it could be used on its own because I got a good workout on it alone. But I see it being a complement to the rest of your programming. And if there is a deficiency in the way that you move or an imbalance, it can not only improve it and rebalance you by using the machine itself, or from that, you can get you can draw your own conclusions and gain recommendations from the product itself. I don't know if you guys are at that point where you're providing recommendations on specific movements, but that's what I gathered from it. And it's phenomenal. It really is.
I appreciate that. And by the way, it sounds like just that statement you made, it sounds like I don't think you got the full Proteus recommendations report because Justin James created his own test.
Yeah.
If you did one of our standardized tests, I'll share with you afterwards. We actually provide like force velocity profiling and specific exercise recs at velocity ranges too. So I'm going to share that with you because I didn't see that part. This is going to blow your mind. This is like so Justin uses it in a certain way. I'm going to share it with you right afterwards. It's incredible. Literally by body area, train power at and do these exercises. So basically we say as a performance testing tool, this is the ultimate tool. And this is really it complements all other measurement tools. But if you're going to get one thing, this is the tool to get from an assessment, physical strength and power assessment standpoint. And it is the ultimate. As a training tool, it is an incredibly powerful, differentiated tool in your toolkit. That's what we say. The testing part of it helps you make decisions about how you should be training, what movements, what equipment. And the individualized training program. And then what you do for training, you often use Proteus as one of the tools. Mm-hmm. It fits very beautifully into a lot of these environments. And that's how we've designed the product. And it's very good right now. And it's like, 1% of the way to its full potential.
Sam, I really appreciate you being on the show today. And for those of you listening, if you haven't had a chance, take a look at Proteus. I'll tell you, it's a game changer. And if you're an athlete, you probably already know this because you're looking for ways to improve your performance and irk out that extra 1% in your ability. It really is a game changer. Check out Proteus.com, and I'll leave everything in the show notes. Sam, again, thank you so much for being on the show today. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Talk soon.